There is something happening inside you right now that you cannot fully explain. You feel it in the quiet moments, in the space between one breath and the next, when the noise of the world pulls back just long enough for something deeper to press forward. It is not anxiety, though it feels heavy. It is not confusion, though the path ahead looks unclear. It is something older than your circumstances, something that has been moving beneath the surface of your life, long before this moment arrived. And the reason you are here, the reason these words found you on this particular day, is not coincidence. It is not the algorithm. It is not chance. You were led here because there is a voice that has been trying to reach you, and today, finally, you stopped long enough to listen. But here is the paradox you are living inside right now, and it is one of the most sacred contradictions in all of human experience. You are tired, not just physically tired, though your body carries its own weight. You are tired in the deeper places, in the places where hope used to feel easy, in the places where you once believed without hesitation, in the places where your dreams used to burn bright before the years began to cool them down. You are tired of trying and not seeing. You are tired of believing and waiting. You are tired of showing up for a life that sometimes feels like it is not showing up for you. And yet, and this is the part that matters most, something in you refuses to stop. Something in you keeps moving even when you have every reason to be still. Something in you woke up this morning when it would have been easier not to. Something in you pressed play on this message when every distraction in the world was competing for your attention. That something is not stubbornness. That something is not habit. That something is the call of God on your life, and it does not take a day off, even when you feel like you cannot take one more step. This is what it means to be chosen in a season of weakness. This is the holy contradiction that marks the lives of every man and woman who was ever used by God to do something that outlasted their own strength. You do not feel like a chosen one today. You feel like someone who is barely holding it together. You feel like someone who has made too many mistakes, waited too long, missed too many windows. You feel small in a world that rewards the loud and the confident and the put together. And yet heaven looks at you right now and sees something you cannot see in yourself. Heaven looks at you and does not see your exhaustion. Heaven looks at you and sees the one it has been preparing. Heaven looks at you and sees the answer to a prayer that someone else has been crying out. Heaven looks at you and sees Monday. Yes, this Monday. Not a Monday in the abstract. Not a Monday someday when you finally feel ready. This Monday, June 15th, is not just another square on a calendar. It is a date that was written into the fabric of your story long before you were born. And the reason it feels significant to you, the reason something stirred in you when you read those words or heard that title, is because the Spirit of the living God is confirming something your mind has not yet caught up with. Your spirit already knows. Your spirit has always known. The tired parts of you are the human parts of you, and they are real, and they are valid, and God is not dismissing them. But they are not the final word. They are not the loudest voice in the room today. You see, the most dangerous person in any room is not the one who feels strong. The most dangerous person in any room is the one who feels weak and chooses to obey anyway. The most dangerous life in any generation is not the one lived from a place of comfort and certainty. The most dangerous life is the one that has been broken open, emptied out, and handed back to the one who gave it. Because when God gets a life that has nothing left to prove and nowhere left to run, He does not throw it away. He does not discard the ones who feel like they have nothing left. He fills them. He rebuilds them. He positions them for something that their own effort could never have manufactured. And that is exactly where you are right now. You are not too broken to be chosen. You are not too late to be used. You are not too tired to be transformed. In fact, the weariness you carry today is not a disqualification. It is a qualification. It is the very thing that empties you enough for God to fill you with something you could not have held when you were full of yourself. It is the stripping away of every plan and every pride and every pretense until all that is left is you, raw and real, standing before heaven and saying, I do not have anything left, but I am still here. And that, beloved chosen one, is exactly the posture that heaven moves toward. The paradox of your calling is this: you were chosen not because of what you have accomplished, but because of what you were willing to survive. You were chosen not because you were the strongest candidate, but because you were the one who kept saying yes, even when everything in you wanted to say no more. You were chosen not because your life looks like a success story from the outside, but because your spirit carries a frequency that heaven recognizes. And that frequency, that deep resonance in the core of who you are, is what brought you to this moment on this day. It is what will carry you across the threshold of everything this Monday holds. And so before you hear another word, before the fullness of what heaven has prepared for you in this message begins to unfold, you need to receive this first. You need to let it land in the tired places and the hollow places and the places where disappointment has lived too long. You are not disqualified. You are not forgotten. You are not a mistake. You are not a casualty of your own choices or a victim of your own story. You are the chosen one who is standing exactly where God planned for you to stand, at exactly the hour He appointed, holding exactly the readiness that heaven requires, which is nothing more and nothing less than the willingness to be here. The Word of God says it plainly, and it says it over your life right now. For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6. He goes with you into the tired. He goes with you into the uncertain. He goes with you into Monday. He does not wait for you to feel ready. He does not hold His presence hostage until you have it all together. He goes with you now, as you are, from where you are, into what is coming. And what is coming is not more of the same. What is coming is the breakthrough that your weeping has been sowing toward. What is coming is the open door that your patience has been purchasing. What is coming is the moment when everything you have carried finally makes sense, and everyone who doubted you finally witnesses what God was building in the dark. If you feel this word in your spirit right now, if something in you is stirring and shifting, and recognizing that you were meant to receive this message today, then type 444 in the comments right now. 444 is more than a number. It is a declaration. It is you saying, I am here. I am chosen. I am ready for what God is about to do. Let heaven see your response. Let the angels mark the moment. Let this be the first act of the new chapter that begins this Monday in your life. Because you were called before you felt worthy. You were chosen before you felt strong. And this Monday, the God who has never once taken His eyes off of you is about to make it undeniably, visibly, historically clear. You are still carrying what Section 1 placed inside you, and that is exactly where it needs to stay. Let it settle. Let it breathe. Let the truth that you were chosen before you felt worthy continue to move through the deeper rooms of your spirit, because what comes next is going to build on that foundation in a way that will make everything you have lived through suddenly look less like a tragedy and more like a training ground. There is a man in the ancient scriptures whose story is being told many times, perhaps never quite the way you need to hear it today. His name was Gideon. And the reason his story matters to you right now, on the eve of the Monday that is about to change your life, is not because he was impressive. It is not because he was bold or decorated or celebrated. It is because when heaven found him, he was hiding. He was not standing on a hilltop with his arms raised in worship. He was not leading a congregation or commanding an army or walking in the fullness of his destiny. He was crouched down in a wine press, threshing wheat in secret, afraid of the enemy that had taken over the land he was supposed to be living freely in. He was doing the smallest possible version of survival because that was all he believed he was capable of. And that is exactly where the angel of the Lord appeared to him. Think about that for a moment. Heaven did not wait for Gideon to get himself together. Heaven did not send a messenger to a man who had already figured it out. Heaven dispatched an angel to a winepress, to a hiding place, to the most undignified and fearful corner of a man's existence. And the first words spoken over him were not words of correction or disappointment. They were words of identity. The angel looked at this trembling, hiding, wheat-threshing man and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Not, "The Lord will be with you once you clean yourself up." Not, "The Lord sees potential in you if you can manage to stop being afraid." The Lord is with you. Present tense, right now, in the winepress, in the hidings. Mighty warrior, not someday warrior, not almost warrior. Mighty warrior, spoken over a man who had not yet done a single mighty thing. And Gideon's response was the response of every chosen one who has ever lived in the gap between their calling and their confidence. He pushed back. He questioned. He said, "Pardon me, my Lord, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us?" He looked at his circumstances and used them as evidence against his calling. He pointed to the difficulty of his season and said, "This does not look like the life of someone who is favored. This does not feel like the existence of someone who is chosen." And if you are honest with yourself today, that is a question you have asked in your own language, in your own quiet moments, in the parts of your heart you do not always say out loud. If God is with me, then why does this still hurt? If I am chosen, then why does the enemy still seem to be winning? If my Monday is coming, then why does today still feel so long? Gideon asked that question, and heaven did not answer it the way he expected. God did not give him a theological explanation for every hard thing that had happened. God did not trace back through every difficult chapter and justify every painful page. God simply said, "Go in the strength you have. Go in the strength you have, not the strength you wish you had. Not the strength you used to have before disappointment came. Not the strength you will have someday when everything is finally resolved. The strength you have right now, in this moment, with this level of faith, with this much courage, with exactly this much in your hands. Go." And Gideon did what chosen ones always do when they finally stop arguing with their calling. He obeyed. Not perfectly. He still asked for signs. He still wrestled with doubt. He still checked and double-checked because the weight of what God was asking felt so far beyond what he believed himself to be. But he moved. He stepped out of the winepress. He stopped letting his hiding place define his destiny. And the God who called him mighty warrior before he had done anything mighty began to move on his behalf in ways that made it absolutely clear that the victory was never going to depend on Gideon's strength anyway. It was always going to depend on whose voice Gideon chose to believe. And this is the word for you today. You have been in your own winepress. You know the hiding places you have built, not out of laziness, but out of self-protection. You know the dreams you stopped saying out loud because saying them felt like setting yourself up for more disappointment. You know the prayers you have shortened because somewhere along the way it started to feel like Maybe the line was not connecting the way it used to. You know, the version of yourself you present to the world, and the version that sits alone at 3 in the morning, wondering if any of this is ever going to turn around. Heaven knows that version too. Heaven is not shocked by it. Heaven is not disappointed by it. Heaven sent a message to that exact version of you, and the message sounds exactly like it sounded to Gideon. The Lord is with you, mighty one, right now, in the hiding, in the questioning, in the smallness. Right now, the Lord is with you. Because the thing about being chosen is that it was never a title you earned. It was never a status you achieved by performing well enough, or believing hard enough, or surviving enough seasons without breaking. Being chosen is an act of God, not an achievement of man. It originates in the will of heaven, not in the worthiness of the one being called. And that means your weakness, the very weakness that has been whispering to you that you are not enough, that you have missed your moment, that Monday will come and go just like every other day. That weakness has no authority over what God has already decided about you. It has no vote. It has no veto. It can whisper all it wants, but it cannot change what was written in the council of heaven before the foundation of the world was laid. Gideon went from hiding in a winepress to leading a 300-man army to a victory so lopsided that no human being could take credit for it. Not because he became a different person. Not because his fear fully disappeared before the battle began. But because he chose, in the face of everything that felt impossible, to believe the words spoken over him rather than the circumstances surrounding him. He chose the voice of heaven over the voice of his own inadequacy. And on the other side of that choice, he found not just victory but a legacy, a story still being told thousands of years later, a testimony that reaches across centuries and lands in a winepress like yours today to say, you are next. Your winepress is not your final address. Your hiding place is not your permanent home. The smallness you feel right now is not the measure of the greatness that heaven has already assigned to your name. And this Monday, June 15th, is not just a date. It is the day you step out of the winepress. It is the day you stop letting the gap between where you are and where you were called to be convince you that the call was never real. It is the day you go in the strength you have, knowing that the God who spoke over Gideon is the same God who has been speaking over you. Go in the strength you have. It is enough. It has always been enough. Because the strength was never really yours to begin with. It was always His, living inside a vessel that finally said yes. The Word of God says it this way, and let it land on every tired and hidden and underestimated place inside you. Judges chapter 6, verse 14. The Lord turned to him and said, Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? Am I not sending you? Not, are you strong enough? Not, are you ready enough? Not, have you healed enough or waited enough or proved enough? Am I not sending you? The sending is the answer. The sending is the qualification. And you, beloved chosen one, are being sent into Monday. You can feel it building, can you not? Something in the atmosphere of this message has been shifting with every word, and that shift is not accidental. It is not the product of carefully chosen language alone. It is the response of your spirit to a truth it has always known, but has not always had permission to fully receive. Gideon heard it in a winepress. You are hearing it right now, wherever you are sitting, wherever you have pressed play, in your car, or your bedroom, or your kitchen, or the quiet corner of a world that does not yet know what is about to happen in your life. The word has been going out, and your spirit has been catching it, and something in the deepest part of you is beginning to agree. And what you are agreeing with is this: you are not ordinary, not in the way the world uses that word. not in the way the voices of doubt and disappointment have tried to convince you of. You carry something that cannot be manufactured, cannot be mimicked, and cannot be extinguished no matter how long the night has lasted. You carry a calling, and a calling is not a feeling. It is not a mood. It is not the byproduct of an inspiring video or an emotional moment that fades by Tuesday. A calling is a divine assignment written into the architecture of your existence before your first breath, before your first word, before your first failure or your first success. It was there when you were formed. It is there now. And it will be there on Monday when heaven begins to make it visible in ways you have only dared to imagine in the quietest moments of your most private hoping. But here is what no one tells you about carrying a calling. It comes with a frequency, not a metaphor, not a poetic device, but an actual, measurable, real frequency. The kind that researchers and neuroscientists have spent decades studying. The kind that shows up on equipment in laboratories. The kind that separates the ones who seem to operate on a different level from everyone around them. Chosen ones carry a specific frequency. Researchers call it gamma. And the reason this matters, the reason science is suddenly walking into the middle of a spiritual conversation, is because God did not create a divide between the natural and the supernatural. He created one world, and everything in that world, including the mind He gave you, was designed to function at the level He intended for it. For more than 30 years, a neuroscientist named Dr. James Rivers, trained through programs connected to both MIT and NASA, dedicated his research to understanding what separates the minds of people who seem to break through every ceiling from the minds of people who remain stuck beneath them. What he found was not a mystery of talent or luck or privilege. What he found was a pattern of brainwave activity, specifically the presence of two frequencies that most adults have lost access to, but that children carry naturally, that creative geniuses access regularly, and that people who experience what the world calls breakthrough seem to be operating in without even knowing it. The first frequency is theta, running between 4 and 8 cycles per second, the state of deep creativity, accelerated learning, and intuitive insight. The second is gamma, the frequency of peak mental performance, the state that neuroscientists associate with what people describe as eureka moments, sudden clarity, and what athletes and artists call flow. These are not mystical inventions. They are documented, measured, and reproducible states of brain activity. And they are the frequencies that chosen ones naturally tend toward when their minds are aligned with their purpose. The problem is that somewhere between childhood and adulthood, between the uninhibited dreaming of a young mind and the accumulated weight of responsibility, disappointment, and survival, most people lose consistent access to these states. The mind becomes dominated by beta waves, the frequency of stress, analysis, and anxious thinking. And a mind locked in beta cannot easily receive what a mind open to theta and gamma can perceive with ease. This is not a spiritual failure. It is a neurological reality. And Dr. Rivers spent more than a decade developing a solution so simple, so accessible, and so precise that when you first hear it, your instinct might be to question whether something this straightforward could really work. 7 minutes. That is all it takes. 7 minutes of a specifically engineered audio frequency, delivered through a pair of headphones, using a principle called brainwave entrainment, which is the scientifically documented ability of the brain to synchronize its own electrical activity with rhythmic external stimuli. When the right frequencies are introduced to the brain through sound, the brain does not resist them. It follows them. It falls into step with them the way a tuning fork resonates. When a matching frequency is struck nearby, the audio that Dr. Rivers created now known as the genius wave, uses a precise combination of binaural beats and isochronic tones to guide your brain gently but powerfully into the theta. And gamma states that your calling has always required, but your circumstances have been blocking. No meditation experience needed, no special training, no pharmaceutical intervention. 7 minutes and the frequency that was always meant to be yours begins to come back online. And the people who have experienced this are not extraordinary exceptions. They are people who sound exactly like you. A woman who had been carrying the weight of financial pressure for so long that she had stopped being able to think clearly, stopped being able to see solutions that she knew were right in front of her. She started the 7-minute practice, and within 3 weeks described something she called a lifting, like a fog she had stopped noticing because she had lived in it so long, had finally begun to clear. She said the ideas started coming again. She said she woke up one morning with a solution to a problem she had been circling for 8 months. A man who had tried every productivity system, every morning routine, every supplement, and still felt like he was operating at half his capacity. 4 weeks into using the genius wave daily, and his own words were, "It is like someone turned the lights back on." Another person, describing herself as such whose faith had always been strong, but whose mind had always been scattered, said that after beginning the 7-minute practice, for the first time in years, she could sit in prayer without her thoughts dissolving after 30 seconds hit. She said it felt like her mind finally caught up with what her spirit had been trying to do all along. That last testimony matters particularly in this moment, because that is exactly what is at stake for you. Your spirit has been ahead of your mind. Your calling has been pulling on a frequency that your brain has been too burdened to fully receive. And the genius wave is not a replacement for faith. It is not a substitute for prayer or surrender or obedience. It is the removal of a neurological barrier that has been standing you and the full activation of everything God placed inside you before you were born. Now, before the link goes in the pinned comment, before the details are laid out, there is something that needs to be said first, and it needs to be said honestly. $39 is not nothing. For some of you hearing this right now, that amount represents a real decision, a genuine stretch, a moment of asking yourself whether this is worth it. That feeling is valid. That hesitation is not weakness. It is wisdom, and it deserves to be honored. So let this be said clearly. This is not a purchase you are being pressured into. This is an invitation, and only you can know whether this is your moment to accept it. What Dr. Rivers created normally carries a price of $49. Through the link in the pinned comment and the description, it is available today for $39. And it comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee, full and unconditional, which means you have 3 full months to experience what this does in your life before you make a final decision with your money. The risk is as low as it can possibly be, but the opportunity is as high as everything you have been waiting for. One final thing on this. There are imitations and unauthorized versions of this audio circulating in places that have nothing to do with Dr. Rivers or his research. Do not purchase from any source other than the single link in the pinned comment and the description of this video. What you receive through that link is the original, the verified, the precision-engineered frequency that was developed through 30 years of neuroscientific research. Anything else is not the same tool. And this particular moment in your life deserves the real thing. This offer is not permanent. The pricing available today is time limited and quantity limited. And when it closes, it closes. If something in you is saying this is for me, that something is worth listening to. Because the frequency you carry as a chosen one was never meant to stay dormant, and Monday is coming. And now, just as the practical has been laid before you, just as the door of possibility has been opened and the invitation extended, something in your spirit is ready to go deeper again. The information you just received was not a detour from the spiritual. It was an extension of it. Because the God who calls you does not separate the renewal of your mind from the renewal of your life. He speaks to the whole of you, the spirit that prays, the soul that feels, and the mind that must be, positioned to receive what heaven is releasing. And now that the mind has been addressed, the spirit calls you further in. Because here is what needs to be said about the silence you have been sitting in. Not the comfortable silence, not the peaceful pause between one good season and the next, but the particular kind of silence that feels like abandonment, even when you know intellectually that you have not been left. The silence that settles over a life when the answer has not come as quickly as the need demanded. The silence that follows a prayer you poured everything into, only to hear nothing back, at least. Nothing you could name or point to or hold in your hands as evidence that heaven was listening. You know that silence. You have lived inside it, some of you for months, some of you for years, and the weight of it has shaped the way you pray, and the way you hope, and the way you allow yourself to want things anymore. Gideon knew that silence too. Before the angel appeared in the winepress, there had been years of oppression. Years of the Midianites destroying everything the Israelites worked to build. Years of watching what should have been abundance get stripped away season after season. Years of a people wondering where the God of their fathers had gone, why the miracles they had heard about in the stories of their ancestors were not showing up in the reality of their present moment. That is a particular kind of pain. Not just suffering, but suffering in the absence of visible divine response. And Gideon was a product of that silence. He was shaped by it. His hiding, his fear, his insistence that his family was the weakest and he was the least, all of it was the fruit of years of silence that had slowly convinced an entire generation that perhaps heaven had moved on. And then the angel came, not after the silence was explained, not after God issued a formal apology for the waiting, not after every question had been answered. The angel came into the middle of the unresolved silence and spoke identity over a man who had been defined by absence. And this is the rhythm of God that you must understand and carry with you into Monday. He does not always break the silence by answering the question you have been asking. He breaks it by releasing the word that repositions you for the answer that was always coming. He breaks it not with explanation, but with identity. Not with justification, but with calling. Not with a map of everything that happened and why, but with a fickle declaration that cuts through all of it and says, I was never gone, I was preparing, and now it is time. The silence you have been in was not punishment. It was not evidence of being forgotten or disqualified, or passed over in favor of someone more worthy. The silence was the space in which God was doing the work that cannot be done in the noise. The work of stripping away what you were leaning on that was not Him. The work of quieting the voices that were louder than His. The work of bringing you to exactly this point, this particular intersection of desperation and readiness, where you are empty, enough to be filled with something that your own plans and your own strength never could have produced. The silence was surgical. The silence was intentional. And the silence is ending. This Monday is not arriving into a life that has been standing still. It is arriving into a life that has been being prepared in ways invisible to the human eye, but entirely visible to the eye of heaven. Every closed door was not rejection. Every delayed answer was not denial. Every season that felt like winter was not death. It was dormancy. And there is a profound difference between death and dormancy, between something that is over and something that is waiting for the right conditions to break through the surface and show itself to a world that had given up expecting it. You have not been in death, you have been in dormancy. And spring does not ask permission to arrive. It simply comes because the season appointed for it has come. And what God is releasing into your life this Monday does not come because you finally figured out the right formula or said the right prayer in the right posture with the right level of faith. It comes because the appointed time has arrived, because the preparation is complete, because the silence has done its work, and because the same God who knew Gideon's name before Gideon knew his own calling has known your name, your address, your winepress, your specific brand of hiding, and your particular Monday since before the world was spoken into existence. There is a reality that chosen ones must come to terms with, and it is one of the most liberating truths in all of Scripture and all of human experience. Your breakthrough was never dependent on your performance. It was dependent on His promise. And His promises do not expire. They do not have a shelf life determined by how long you have been waiting or how many times you have stumbled on the way to receiving them. His promises are yes and amen, not yes and amen as long as you do not take too long, not yes and amen, as long as you keep your faith perfectly intact through every storm. Yes and amen, full stop, spoken over your life, sealed by a covenant that no amount of human failure can break. This is why Monday matters. Not because you have earned it, not because you have finally arrived at some spiritual milestone that qualifies you for the favor heaven is about to release. Monday matters because God decided it would, because in the council of eternity, before time was measured in days or weeks or months or years, a moment was appointed for you. A turning point was placed in the fabric of your story. A before and an after was written into the narrative of your life. And the name of that turning point is this Monday, June 15th. And so, what do you do with this between now and then? You do not strive. You do not manufacture. You do not white-knuckle your way through the hours remaining. You stand. You hold. You let the word that has been spoken over you today continue to do its work in the places inside you that have been waiting the longest. You let the truth that you are chosen, that you are sent, that the silence was preparation and not punishment, settle into the foundation of how you see yourself and how you approach the day that is coming. The word of the Lord, spoken through the prophet Isaiah, lands here with the weight of everything you have just received. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. You are about to soar, not because the weariness was not real, not because the waiting was not long, but because the one who made the eagle also made you, and He has not forgotten how to lift what He created. The soaring is not a distant promise. It is the next chapter of a story that has already been written in your favor. And as you stand at the edge of everything this Monday holds, there is something you need to understand about the nature of divine timing that will change the way you enter the hours between now and then. God does not release breakthrough into a vacuum. He releases it into a life that has been positioned to receive it. And positioning is not the same as perfection. Positioning is simply the willingness to remain open, to remain present, to remain in the place where heaven can find you when the moment comes. Gideon was positioned in a winepress, not a palace, and heaven found him there. You are positioned right here, right now, in the middle of whatever this season has looked like, and heaven is finding you in this exact place too. The strength that is being renewed in you, as these words settle, is not the strength of human determination. It is not the strength of someone who has finally decided to try harder or believe more or perform better. It is the strength that comes from above, the kind that does not deplete under pressure, the kind that does not shrink when the opposition increases, the kind that carries you not just to Monday, but through everything Monday opens into. Because Monday is not the destination. Monday is the door. And what is on the other side of that door is a territory so much larger than the season you have been living in, that your current imagination cannot fully contain it. Let your spirit stay open. Let the word continue to work. And let Monday come to a you that is already standing in the strength of the one who appointed it. The door that Monday is about to open does not lead into a room you have never been qualified for. It leads into the room that was built for you before you arrived on this earth. The room with your name already carved above the entrance. The room where everything that was taken from you, delayed from you, and hidden from you is waiting to be returned with the kind of interest that only heaven knows how to calculate. You have been standing outside that room for what feels like too long. You have pressed your ear against the wall and heard something moving on the other side and told yourself it was probably not for you, but it was always for you. It has always been for you. And the key that opens that door is not something you have to find. It has been in your hand the entire time. You simply needed this moment, this word, this Monday, to finally believe it enough to use it. But before the door swings open, before you step across the threshold into everything that is waiting on the other side, there is a truth about the journey that brought you here that must be spoken over you plainly and without softening. The battles you have faced were not random. The opposition you have encountered was not the product of bad luck or poor timing or the absence of divine favor. Every giant that rose up in your path, every wall that refused to fall when you first approached it, every season of resistance that made you question whether the promise was real, all of it was curriculum. All of it was intentional. All of it was the training ground for a warrior whose full capacity had not yet been revealed, not to the world, and not even fully to yourself. This is where Gideon's story reaches its most powerful moment. And it is a moment that most people rush past because the surface detail seems almost absurd. When God finally commissioned Gideon to lead Israel against the Midianite army, Gideon gathered 32,000 men. 32,000. And God looked at that number and said it was too many. Too many. Not too few, too many. Because if 32,000 men defeated the enemy, the people would say their own strength had saved them. So God reduced the army, first to 10,000, then, through a test so specific and so strange that it could only have been divinely designed, down to 300 men. 300 against an army described as thick as locusts, so numerous they could not be counted. And God said, "With these 300 I will save you." Think about what Gideon felt in that moment. He had already wrestled with doubt about his own calling. He had already asked for signs and confirmations. He had already talked himself out of his own destiny more than once. And now, God was taking away 90% of the resources he had gathered to face the most overwhelming challenge of his life. From the outside, from the perspective of human logic and human strategy, this looked like sabotage. It looked like the very God who had called him was now setting him up to fail in the most public and devastating way possible. But from the perspective of heaven, it was the opposite. God was not removing Gideon's strength. God was removing everything that would have allowed Gideon to misattribute the victory. And this is the word for you today. Some of what has been taken from you in this season, Some of what has been reduced, stripped back, or denied was not the enemy stealing your future. It was God protecting the glory of what He was about to do in your life. Because if you had arrived at your breakthrough with all 32,000 of your own plans intact, with every resource you had gathered through your own efforts still in place, with every strategy you had developed through your own wisdom still operational, you would have crossed the finish line and given yourself the credit. And the miracle that heaven designed for your life was never meant to be something you could explain without mentioning God. It was always meant to be so clearly, so undeniably, so embarrassingly beyond what you could have arranged for yourself that the only possible response was worship. The reduction was not rejection. The stripping was not abandonment. The 300 was not a consolation prize. It was the precise and perfect number that heaven required to make the victory undeniable. And the Monday that is coming is arriving on the other side of your own reduction, your own stripping, your own season of watching what you thought you needed get taken away. And it is coming to show you that what God does with 300 is more than what you could have done with 32,000. It is coming to prove that the miracle was never in the resources. It was always in the calling, and the calling has never left you. Now, here is what you must understand about the giants that still stand between where you are and where you are going. They are not evidence that God has lost control of your story. They are evidence that your story contains something worth fighting over. You do not send an army against a field of weeds. You send an army against a territory that holds value. And the intensity of the opposition in your life is a direct reflection of the value of what you placed inside you and the threat that your fully activated destiny poses to the kingdom of darkness. The enemy does not waste resources on people who are not going anywhere. He concentrates his resistance on the ones who carry the frequency of breakthrough. The ones whose Monday has been written into the eternal calendar, the ones whose testimony is going to shake something loose in a generation that desperately needs to see what God can do with a person who refuses to quit. You are that person. You have always been that person, even when you did not feel like it. Even when the giant looked too large and the army looked too small and the winepress felt like the only safe option. You kept the frequency alive. You kept the ember burning even when everything around it was wet and cold and hostile to fire. And that ember, that stubborn, persistent, heaven-sustained ember of faith and calling and identity that refused to go out, no matter how long the night lasted, that is what Monday is going to breathe on until it becomes a flame that nothing in your world can ignore. The battles behind you were not wasted. The tears were not wasted. The years of waiting and pressing and standing, when everything in your body wanted to sit down and let the current take you wherever it wanted, none of it was wasted. Every single moment of resistance you survived was adding something to the interior architecture of who you are becoming. Every giant you faced, whether you defeated it cleanly or limped away from it barely standing, left something in you that made you more capable of receiving what is coming than you would have been without the fight. You are not behind. You are not damaged. You are not disqualified by the difficulty of the road you traveled to get here. You are qualified by it, refined by it, strengthened in ways that the comfortable and the untested cannot access, because there are dimensions of God that only reveal themselves in the wilderness, and you have been in the wilderness long enough to know Him there in ways that will sustain you through everything the Promised Land requires. Gideon and his 300 did not defeat the Midianites with conventional weapons or conventional strategy. They carried torches hidden inside clay jars. and trumpets, and at the appointed moment, they broke the jars, let the light blaze out, and blew the trumpets together. And the enemy, overwhelmed by the sudden blaze of light and the sound of what seemed like a vast army, turned on each other in confusion and fled. The victory came through light, breaking out of what had been containing it. And that is the prophetic picture of your Monday. The light that has been inside you, contained by the clay of your circumstances, the jar of your limitations, the vessel of a season that felt too small and too dark for what you carry. That light is about to break out. The jar is about to shatter. And what blazes forth is going to cause confusion in the camp of everything that has been arrayed against your destiny. You are not walking into Monday as a victim hoping for a break. You are walking into Monday as a chosen one whose appointed moment has arrived. You are walking in with the torch already lit, the trumpet already in your hand, and the God of 300 already positioned to turn your simple act of obedience into a victory that defies every natural explanation. The Word of God places a seal on everything spoken in this moment. Romans chapter 8, verse 31. If God is for us, who can be against us? Not who will try. Not who will show up with their arguments and their armies and their long list of reasons why you should not make it. Who can against us? The answer is no one. Nothing. No giant, no delay, no reduction, no silence, no season of stripping, no voice of doubt speaking in your own accent about your own history. None of it can stand against the God who is for you, and He is for you. He has always been for you, and Monday is the day. He makes it impossible for anyone, including you, to argue otherwise. The light that broke out of Gideon's clay jar is the same light that has been burning inside you through every section of this message, and it has not dimmed. If anything, it has grown. Something has been happening in you as these words have moved through the atmosphere of wherever you are right now. Something that cannot be fully explained by the mechanics of a video or the craft of language. What you have been experiencing is the resonance of truth meeting a spirit that was made to carry it. And that resonance does not stop when a section ends. It continues, it deepens, it spreads into the parts of you that you did not even know were waiting to be reached. And here is something that the chosen one must understand about the nature of what they carry. It was never meant to stay contained within the borders of one life. Light that breaks out of the clay jar does not illuminate only the hand that held it. It blazes across a field. It reaches into darkness that stretches far beyond the person standing at the center of the moment. It touches things and people and situations that the one holding the torch cannot even see from where they are standing. And this is the dimension of your calling that perhaps has not been fully spoken over you yet. You did not receive this light for yourself alone. You were chosen to carry something that was always meant to overflow. Think about what it means that you are here right now. Think about the specific chain of decisions and circumstances and quiet nudges of the Spirit that brought you to this exact message on this exact day. Someone shared something. Someone passed along a word. Someone felt a prompting they could not fully explain and followed it. And that following created a path that eventually led to you. Every person who has ever been touched by a message like this one arrived through a network of people who cared enough to say, "You need to hear this. You need to receive this. This is for you." And the question that now rests on you, the question that the light blazing inside you is already asking, is whether you will be that person for someone else. There is someone in your life right now who is in their wine press. You know who they are, even if you have not spoken their name out loud in this moment. You can feel them at the edges of your awareness as you receive this word. The friend who has gone quiet in a way that tells you the silence is not peace but pain. The family member whose eyes carry something heavy that their words are not saying. The colleague you pass in the corridor who smiles but whose smile has lost the light it used to have. The person in your online community who comments less and less because they are retreating in the way people retreat when they have started to believe that no one would notice. Either way, that person needs what you just received, not a summary of it, not a second-hand description of it. They need to sit where you are sitting and let these words do in them what they have been doing in you. And the simplest, most powerful, most immediate thing you can do for that person right now costs you nothing but a moment and a movement of your finger. Share this. That is it. That is the whole instruction. Share this video, this message, this word with the person whose face just surfaced in your mind. Because what feels like a casual act of sharing from your side is going to feel like divine intervention from theirs. They are going to wonder how you knew. They are going to feel seen in a way they have not felt seen in a long time. And the chain of light that began when someone shared this with you is going to extend one more link, reach one more winepress, touch one more life that heaven has already marked for a Monday breakthrough of their own. And while you are thinking about that person, while their face is still present in your mind and your heart is already moving toward them, do one more thing before you reach out. Like this video, it is a small act, but it carries a significance that goes beyond the number it adds to a counter. When you press like, you are telling the unseen architecture of this platform that this word has value, that it deserves to reach further, that there are more people in more wine presses who need to hear what you just heard. You are not applauding a performance. You are casting a vote for the continued movement of a word that has the power to change lives. And that vote matters. Every single one of them matters, because every additional person this message reaches is a person whose Monday could be rewritten by the same truth that is rewriting yours right now. This community, the community of chosen ones who gather around these messages, is not a passive audience. It is an active company of people who understand that they are part of something larger than their individual stories. When you subscribe, when you make the decision to stay connected to this flow of word and spirit and truth, you are not just ensuring that you receive the next message. You are adding your presence to a gathering that heaven takes seriously. You are saying, I want to remain in the place where the word goes out, because I know that my spirit needs consistent feeding, consistent watering, consistent exposure to truth that counteracts the narrative of limitation and defeat that the world speaks over me every single day. The world is not going to remind you that you are chosen. Your workplace is not going to start your Monday morning by telling you that you were divinely designed for breakthrough. The news cycle is not going to pause to speak identity over the parts of you that are tired and questioning and wondering if any of this is real. But this community will, these messages will, and subscribing is how you make sure that when the next word goes out, when the next section of your story is addressed by heaven through this channel, you are there to receive it. Hit subscribe if you have not already done so. And if you have, then this is your reminder that your presence here is not accidental and your continued engagement is not insignificant. You are part of this. You belong in this room. Now, there is one more thing to be said, and it is said with transparency and with gratitude rather than obligation. Creating these messes, carrying this word, building this space where chosen ones can come and be seen and be spoken to, and be sent back into their lives with something real. All of that requires resources, time, energy, prayer, preparation, and the practical infrastructure that makes it possible for a message recorded in one place to reach a person sitting in their car or their kitchen or the quiet corner of a world that does not yet know their name. If this message has added something to your life, if these words have met you in a place that needed meeting, if something in you has shifted or settled or strengthened because of what you received here today, and you feel moved to support the continuation of this work, there is a way to do that. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment below. It is not a requirement. It is not a toll on the blessing you just received. It is simply an open door for those who feel the prompting to walk through it, a way of saying, I want more people to find this. I want this word to keep going out. I want to be part of what sustains this. Every contribution, regardless of its size, does something that cannot be measured in currency alone. It says that truth has value. It says that the chosen ones who are still in their wine presses deserve to have someone speaking over them. It says that the work of building people up, of calling out identity and destiny, and calling in the ones who have been told they are too small and too late and too broken, that work is worth sustaining. And if that resonates with you, the link is there. No pressure, no guilt. Just an open hand extended by someone who is grateful you are here and who takes seriously the responsibility of continuing to show up for you. Because that is what this is. Ultimately, it is a showing up. Heaven shows up for you through these words. You show up for the person in your life whose face appeared in your mind a few moments ago when the word about sharing was spoken. And together, through the simple acts of liking and sharing and subscribing and giving when the Spirit moves, this light that broke out of the clay jar keeps blazing. It keeps reaching. It keeps finding wine presses that no one else thought to look in. It keeps speaking mighty warrior over people who are threshing wheat in fear and wondering if anyone in heaven knows their name. Heaven knows your name. Heaven has always known your name. And the fact that you are still here, still receiving, still allowing this word to move in you, even as a section draws toward its close, tells heaven something important. It says you are not done. It says the ember is still burning. It says you are ready for what Monday is bringing. And Monday is coming for a you that is more prepared, more seen, more spoken over, and more connected to the community of chosen ones than you were when this section began. Stay in the room. The best is still ahead. Stay in the room. Those 4 words that closed the last movement of this message were not a casual sign-off. They were an instruction. They were a prophetic directive spoken to the part of you that has a long history of leaving rooms early. Not physical rooms, but the rooms of promise, the rooms of expectation. The rooms where you sat with a hope long enough to feel it begin to take shape, and then something happened. A disappointment arrived. A delay extended itself past the point of comfort. A voice spoke something discouraging into the atmosphere, and you quietly gathered yourself and slipped out before the answer came. You left the room of that prayer. You left the room of that dream. You left the room of that relationship with God that once felt so alive and has since grown complicated by the accumulating weight of unanswered questions. You left because staying felt more painful than leaving, because hope deferred does something to the heart that is not poetic or inspiring when you are living inside it. It is just heavy, and heavy things are hard to keep carrying when the destination keeps feeling further away. But you are still here, and that matters more than you know. The enemy of your calling has one primary strategy. It is not the dramatic, thunderous assault that announces itself with obvious hostility. It is not the bold frontal attack that you can see coming and brace yourself against. His most effective weapon is much quieter and much more patient than that. It is attrition. It is the slow, steady, relentless wearing down of a chosen one through the accumulated weight of time, disappointment, silence, and deferred hope, until the person who was once burning with purpose and expectation has been gradually, almost imperceptibly, ground down to a version of themselves that no longer reaches, no longer risks, no longer allows the full weight of the promise to rest on the inside, because the pain of the gap between promise and the present has simply become too much to keep holding. This is the strategy that was deployed against Gideon and his generation. It was not one catastrophic defeat. It was 7 years of Midianite oppression, 7 years of watching what they planted get destroyed, 7 years of hiding their grain in caves and wine presses to keep it from being taken, 7 years of a slow, grinding diminishment that did not kill them outright, but reshaped them from a people of inheritance into a people of survival. And the most dangerous thing about that kind of warfare is that it does not feel like warfare after a while. It just feels like life. It feels like the way things are. It feels like the new normal. And once a chosen one accepts diminishment as their new normal, the enemy does not need to do anything else. The person has become their own winepress. They have internalized the confinement. They carry the limitation with them, even when the external circumstances that created it have changed. This is why the angel's first words to Gideon were so radical and so necessary. Not instructions, not a battle plan, not even comfort in the conventional sense. Identity. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Spoken, not to who Gideon had become through 7 years of attrition, but to who Gideon was in the eternal record of heaven, the record that is not edited by circumstances, not revised by disappointment, not updated to reflect the diminished version of a person that a hard season has produced. Heaven kept the original. Heaven held the unedited file. And when the moment came, heaven spoke from that file, not from the version the enemy had been working to establish as permanent. And heaven is speaking from your original file today, not the version shaped by the years of wearing down, not the version that learned to want less to avoid the pain of not receiving more, not the version that stopped saying certain things out loud because saying them and not seeing them had become its own particular kind of grief. The original, the one written before the first disappointment, the one that existed in the mind of God before the first enemy had the chance to speak a single word of diminishment over your life. That version is the real version. That version is the one that is walking into Monday. That version is the one that heaven has been protecting through every season that tried to rewrite it. Because the enemy is a liar, and his most sophisticated lies are not the ones that are obviously false. They are the ones that are partially true. He takes something real, a genuine wound, a real disappointment, an actual delay, an honest moment of failure or weakness, and he uses that real thing as the foundation for a conclusion that is entirely false. He takes the truth that you waited and did not receive, and he builds on it the lie that you will never receive. He takes the truth that you tried and it did not work, and he constructs from it the lie that you were never meant for it to work. He takes the truth that you are tired, genuinely, legitimately tired, and he frames it as evidence that you are finished. He is a builder of false conclusions from true foundations, and the only thing that dismantles his architecture is a word from a source higher than his access level. That word has been going out in this message, and every section that you have received has been dismantling something in the structure of false conclusions that the enemy spent seasons constructing over your life. The word that you are chosen dismantles the lie that you are overlooked. The word that the silence was preparation dismantles the lie that God forgot. The word that the reduction was protection dismantles the lie that what was taken was the end of the story. The word that your weariness is not your final condition dismantles the lie that you have already seen the best of what your life will hold. One by one, the false walls are coming down, and what is left standing when they fall is the original, the real, the chosen one that heaven has been holding in trust through every season that tried to talk them out of their destiny. And what stands between you and the full expression of that original, that real, that heaven-held version of yourself is not another obstacle to overcome. It is not another giant to defeat, or another wall to bring down, or another season to survive. What stands between you and it is simply the decision to believe it, the decision to receive the word that has been spoken over you today as more authoritative than the word that your circumstances have been speaking over you for however long the hard season has lasted. The decision to walk out of the winepress, not because everything has been resolved, not because the evidence has finally lined up on the side of the promise, but because the God who sent the angel to Gideon has sent a word to you, and the word says, "Go in the strength you have, because I am the one sending you." The resistance you have felt in this season is ending, not slowly, not partially, not in the incremental way that barely perceptible progress arrives. It is ending with the abruptness and the decisiveness of a divine appointment, because that is exactly what Monday is. It is not the gradual softening of difficult circumstances. It is the moment when heaven intervenes in a way that bypasses the normal pace of natural change and releases something that could only have come from above. You have been pressing against a door that felt permanently sealed. And from the other side of that door, heaven has been positioning everything that belongs to you, everything that was delayed and held in trust and protected through the long season of waiting. And on Monday, the door does not just open. It comes off its hinges. The word of the living God, spoken through the prophet Jeremiah, stands as a declaration over this moment, and over the Monday is pointing you toward. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Plans, not possibilities, not maybes, not options being considered pending your performance. Plans, settled, decided, already in motion, already being implemented by a God who does not make plans he does not intend to keep. Plans to prosper you, plans to give you hope, plans to give you a future that looks different from the season you have been living in. These are his plans for you. They were his plans before the hard season started. They remained his plans through every chapter of the hard season. And they are his plans now, on the eve of the Monday that is about to make them visible. Stay in the room. The door is about to open. The door is about to open, and you can feel it. Not as wishful thinking, not as the kind of manufactured optimism that fades by the next difficult morning, but as something settled and certain, and moving in the deep places of your spirit where the truest things live. Something has shifted in you through the receiving of this word, through the sections that have built one upon another, like stones being laid into a foundation that will hold the weight of everything heaven is about to place on your life. And the shift is not going back. What has been spoken cannot be unspoken. What has been planted cannot be unplanted. What heaven has confirmed in your spirit today has taken root in soil that was prepared by every season of waiting, every tear that watered the ground in the dark, every prayer that felt like it went nowhere but was actually going somewhere you could not yet see. And now, standing at the threshold of this appointed moment, there is something that needs to be addressed with the directness and the love that a chosen one deserves. Because the enemy knows what is coming. He has seen the calendar of heaven. He knows what Monday holds. He knows what is about to be released into your life and into the lives of the chosen ones who have been positioned in this message today. And because he knows, he is going to do what he always does in the hours before a breakthrough. He is going to intensify the whisper, not the shout, because the shout would be too obvious, too easily identified and rejected. The whisper, the quiet, reasonable sounding, familiar voiced whisper that sounds so much like your own thoughts that you do not always recognize it as foreign. The whisper is going to say, "This was just a video." It is going to say, "You have felt this before and nothing changed." It is going to say, "The word was beautiful, but beautiful words do not pay bills or heal bodies, or restore what was broken, or bring back what was lost." It is going to use the language of realism and practicality and past disappointment as its primary tools, because those are the tools that have worked on you before. In seasons when you let the gap between the promise and the present talk you out of the promise entirely, and the enemy is counting on the same strategy working again. He is counting on you walking away from this message, stepping back into the noise and the ordinary rhythm of your day, and gradually, over the next 24 or 48 hours, letting the word that landed so powerfully begin to lift off the surface of your spirit like morning mist when the sun gets buried behind clouds. Do not let that happen. Not this time. Not on the eve of this Monday. Because this time is different. Not because the feeling is stronger, though it may be. Not because the word was better crafted, though it was spoken with everything available. This time is different because the appointed time is different. Because the preparation is complete. Because the silence has done its full work. Because you are not the same person who received a word last time and let it slip. You have been through more since then. You have been refined more since then. You have been brought to a place of greater emptiness, which means a place of greater capacity. And a word that lands in a vessel, this empty, goes deeper and stays longer than any word that landed when you still had enough of your own plans and your own resources and your own strength to cushion the impact. So this time you hold it. This time you carry it past the next 24 hours. This time you let it be the loudest voice in the room when the whisper starts. Because you know the whisper is coming, and knowing it is coming is half of the battle against it. The other half is having a word that is stronger than the whisper, and you have that word now. You have been given it section by section, layer by layer, built up in you like a wall that the whisper is going to run into and find immovable. You are not defenseless against what is coming between now and Monday. You are armed with truth that was spoken from a source higher than any accusation the enemy can bring against your destiny. And Gideon discovered this in the night before the battle. God came to him in the darkness of the hours before the Midianite army was to be confronted and gave him an unusual instruction. He told him to go down to the edge of the enemy camp and listen. Just listen. And what Gideon heard, there was a Midianite soldier telling another about a dream of a loaf of barley bread tumbling into the camp and flattening a tent. And the other soldier interpreted it without hesitation. This can only be the sword of Gideon. God has given the Midianites into his hands. The enemy was already talking about Gideon's victory before Gideon had taken a single step toward the battle. The outcome was already settled in the atmosphere of the enemy's own camp, and hearing that, Gideon worshipped. He did not strategize. He did not run back and gather his 300 and immediately charge. He worshipped. Because he understood in that moment that the battle had already been won in a realm he could not see. And what was about to happen on the physical battlefield was simply the natural world catching up with what had already been decided in the supernatural one. Your Monday is already settled in the realm you cannot see. The conversation about your victory has already been happening in the atmosphere of the enemy's camp. The outcome has already been declared in the council of heaven. What is about to happen in your natural life on Monday and in the days that follow is the physical world catching up with what was decided in eternity before you were born. And the appropriate response to that, the only response that fully honors the weight of what has been spoken over you today, is the same response Gideon gave in the darkness before the dawn of his breakthrough. Worship, surrender, the laying down of every remaining argument and every lingering doubt at the feet of Sun Tzu settled this before you had any say in the matter. This is the moment for that. Right here, in the space these words are creating around you, before Monday arrives and the evidence becomes undeniable, before the physical world catches up with the supernatural declaration, you are being invited to worship in advance, to thank God for what has not yet manifested in the way you can see and touch and measure, to speak over your own life the same way heaven has been speaking over it in this message, to open your mouth and let something come out that agrees with the original, the unedited, the heaven-held version of who you are and what you were made for. And as you do that, as you let worship rise and agreement form, and the declaration of a chosen one take shape in the atmosphere of wherever you are, there is something tangible being asked of you in this moment. A small act that carries a significance far beyond its size.
Nice.
In the comments right now, type these 2 words, I believe. That is your declaration. That is your act of advanced worship. That is you saying to heaven and to the unseen realm, and to every whisper that is already preparing its arguments for the hours ahead. I believe, not I hope, not I wish, not I am trying, I believe. 2 words that cut through every layer of doubt and disappointment and deferred hope and plant a flag in the ground of this appointed moment. Type it now, I believe. Let it be the sound of a chosen one who has received the word, held the word, and is now speaking the word back into the atmosphere of their own life. Because words have weight, your agreement has power, and the declaration you make today on the eve of your Monday is not a small thing in the economy of heaven. It is a seed. It is an act of faith. It is the moment when the clay jar shifts in your hand and the torch inside it begins to press against the walls, ready to blaze. The ancient word of God speaks directly to the power of this moment. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 13. It is written, I believed, therefore I have spoken. Since we have that same spirit of faith, we also believe and therefore speak. Believe and speak. That is the sequence. That is the ancient pattern of a chosen one stepping into their appointed moment. You have believed today. Now speak it. Type it. Let the comment be the first audible agreement of a life that is about to become the testimony that someone else in a wine press desperately needs to hear. I believe. 2 words. The weight of a world turning. I believe. Those 2 words that you just typed, or that are still sitting in the center of your spirit, even if your fingers have not yet moved, are not the end of something. They are the beginning. They are the first spoken agreement of a chapter that has no ceiling, no predetermined limit, no expiration date attached to the favor that heaven is releasing into your life as Monday approaches. And the reason those 2 words carry so much weight is not because of their syllable count or their grammatical simplicity. It is because they represent a choice. In a moment when the evidence has not yet fully arrived, in a season when the physical world has not yet caught up with the supernatural declaration, in the space between the promise and the proof, you chose to believe. And that choice, that specific, deliberate, costly choice to align your voice with heaven's word rather than with your circumstances. That is the choice that has always separated the ones who receive the promise from the ones who watch it from a distance and wonder why it never came for them. It always comes for the ones who choose to believe before they can see. And now, in this section, in this particular movement of the message, heaven wants to speak to something that has not yet been fully addressed. Something that lives beneath the surface of the calling and the breakthrough and the Monday declaration. Something quieter and more personal and more tender than the battle language and the warrior identity and the blazing torch imagery that has been building through the earlier sections of this word. Heaven wants to speak to the you that exists when no one is watching. The you that is not performing faith for an audience or trying to hold it together for the people who depend on you or maintaining the posture of someone who believes. Because the alternative feels like too public a collapse, heaven wants to speak to the private you, the interior you, the you that sits alone in the quiet and feels the full weight of everything you are carrying without the cushion of community or the distraction of activity or the protection of the role you play in everyone else's story. That you is the most important you in this moment. And that you is the one heaven has been reaching for through every section of this message. Because the breakthrough that is coming on Monday is not just for your circumstances. It is not primarily about your bank account or your career or your relationships or your health, though all of those things are held in the hands of the God who is moving on your behalf. The breakthrough that is coming is for the interior you. It is for the you that has been in the winepress. It is for the you that has been threshing wheat in secret because the open field felt too exposed and too dangerous for something as fragile as the hope you were still trying to protect. The external manifestations of your Monday breakthrough, the doors that open, the provision that comes, the relationships that shift, the opportunities that appear, all of those are the overflow of something that happened first in the deepest room of your interior life. And that room is what this section is about. There is a particular kind of loneliness that belongs exclusively to the chosen one. It is not the loneliness of having no one around. You can be surrounded by people who love you and still feel it. It is the loneliness of carrying something that the people around you cannot fully see or understand or validate. It is the loneliness of knowing that you were made for something specific and watching the people in your life live contentedly in a general way that never quite fits the shape of what is burning inside you. It is the loneliness of the anointing, and it is one of the heaviest things a chosen one is asked to carry. Not because the anointing is a burden, but because it sets you apart in ways that are not always comfortable or celebrated, in ways that sometimes isolate before they elevate, in ways that require you to hold something sacred in conditions that are not always sacred. Gideon knew this loneliness. He was the least in his family, from the weakest clan. He was not the one anyone would have looked at and said, "There is our deliverer. There is the one who will change the trajectory of an entire nation." He was the overlooked one, the underestimated one, the one whose calling was so invisible to the people around him that when the angel spoke it over him, his first instinct was to argue because the disconnect between the identity being declared and the life he was living felt too vast to take seriously. He knew what it was to carry something that no one in his immediate world could see or confirm or celebrate. He knew what it was to be chosen in a crowd of people who had no idea that anything about him was different. And yet the anointing was there, invisible to every human eye, but fully present and fully real in the record of heaven. The calling was there, waiting in the architecture of who he was for the moment when heaven decided it was time to make the invisible visible. The strength was there, described by the angel as already belonging to him before he had used it, before he had even believed it was his. It was already there. It had always been there. The winepress did not create it, and the winepress could not destroy it. It was woven into him before his first breath, before his first fear, before the first Midianite set foot on the land that was supposed to be his inheritance. And your anointing is there, right now, in the private interior, unseen room, where heaven keeps the original file of who you are. It is not diminished by the loneliness of carrying it. It is not weakened by the seasons in which no one around you could see it, or name it, or celebrate it. It is not contingent on being recognized by the people in your immediate world before it becomes real. It is real because God said it is real. It is present because heaven placed it there. And Monday is the moment when what has been invisible begins to become undeniable. But before Monday arrives, before the external world begins to reflect what heaven has always known about you, there is something that needs to happen in that interior room. Something that cannot be manufactured by effort or produced by discipline or achieved by any spiritual technique, however powerful. It is the settling, the deep, quiet, unhurried settling of a spirit that has been striving and reaching and grasping after assurance for so long that it has forgotten what it feels like to simply rest in the certainty of being known, to stop proving, to stop performing, to stop holding the tension of the calling in white-knuckled hands, and instead open those hands and let the weight of it rest in a grip that is stronger and steadier and infinitely more capable than yours has ever been. This is what the interior breakthrough looks like. Not a dramatic moment of spiritual fireworks, though those have their place. Not an overwhelming emotional experience, though heaven is not afraid of your tears. It is the quiet, almost imperceptible shift from striving to receiving, from reaching to resting, from holding on to being held. It is the moment when the interior you stops arguing with heaven about whether the calling is real and simply says, I know. I have always known, and I am done pretending otherwise. I am done apologizing for what I carry. I am done shrinking to fit into spaces that were never built for the size of what God placed inside me. I know what I am. I know whose I am. And I am walking into Monday from that place of knowing, not from the place of hoping it might be true, but from the settled, anchored, unshakable place of a chosen one who has received the word and let it do its full work. The interior room is being renovated right now. The walls that disappointment built are coming down. The ceiling that a long season of limitation installed is being removed. The floor that was stained by the accumulated weight of every moment you believed the wrong voice about yourself is being restored. And what is being built in its place is a room large enough to hold everything that Monday is bringing. A room with walls of truth and a ceiling of promise and a floor of covenant that does not shift under the pressure of circumstance. A room that you will live from, not just visit in moments of inspiration. A room that becomes the permanent interior address of a chosen one who knows, finally and fully, who they are. And from that room, everything looks different. The giant does not look smaller, but you look more capable of facing it. The delay does not feel shorter, but you feel more able to hold the tension of waiting without losing the certainty of receiving. The silence does not get louder, but you become more fluent in the language it speaks, the language of preparation and refinement and the patient, purposeful work of a God who is never in a hurry and never late. You are not in a hurry either. Not anymore, because the one who knows their Monday is coming does not scramble. They prepare, they settle, They let the interior renovation complete itself, and they walk toward the appointed day with the unhurried confidence of someone who has already read the end of the story and knows, without a single shadow of doubt, that it was written in their favor. The Word of God seals this interior work with the weight of eternity. Psalm chapter 46, verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. Be still. Not be passive, not be disconnected, not be indifferent to what is coming. Be still, deeply, interiorly, foundationally still. In the stillness, know, not hope, not wonder, not wish, know that He is God. Know that what He has spoken will come to pass. Know that Monday is not a gamble. It is an appointment. And the interior room that is being renovated in you right now is the room from which a chosen one walks into their appointment with the confidence of someone who was invited, expected, and has been prepared for exactly this moment. Be still and know, Monday is already yours. Monday is already yours. Those words did not land in your spirit by accident. They did not find you through a chain of random events or an algorithm that happened to place the right content in front of the right eyes at the right moment. They found you because you were meant to receive them. Because before this Monday was a date on a calendar, it was a declaration in the eternal counsel of a God who has never once been surprised by anything that has happened in your life, never once scrambled to adjust His plans because of a season you did not survive perfectly, never once looked at the accumulated weight of your history and concluded that the cost of continuing to invest in you was too high. He has always known the end of your story. He has always known what Monday holds. And He has been working in every section of this message, in every layer of truth that has settled into you today, to bring you to this final moment ready to receive it, fully, openly, and without reservation. This is where everything that has been spoken comes together. The inner contradiction of being called while feeling weak. The story of a man hiding in a winepress who was called mighty warrior before he had done a single mighty thing. The science of a frequency that the chosen ones carry and the tool designed to help that frequency come fully online. The truth that the silence was surgical and the stripping was protective and the reduction was preparation. The reality that every giant you faced was curriculum and every battle you survived was adding something irreplaceable to the interior architecture of who you are becoming. The settling of the interior room, the declaration of I believe spoken into the atmosphere of an appointed moment. All of it has been building toward this, toward you. Toward this version of you that has been refined and emptied and spoken over and repositioned and is now standing at the threshold of the Monday that heaven wrote into your story before you were born. And before this message closes, before the final word is spoken, and you carry everything you have received back into the world that is waiting for the version of you that Monday is about to release. There is one more thing that needs to happen. Not a call to action, not a strategy or an instruction or a next step, though all of those things have their place and have been offered in their proper moment throughout this message. What needs to happen now is simply this: prayer. Not a performance of prayer, not a carefully constructed theological exercise, but the real thing, the honest, unhurried, interior thing. The conversation between a chosen one and the God who chose them, spoken in the language that only the two of them fully understand. So if you are willing, wherever you are right now, whether your eyes are open or closed, whether you are alone or surrounded by the noise of a world that does not yet know what is about to change in your life, receive these words as your own. Let them be the prayer of a chosen one on the eve of their Monday. Father, I come to you not because I have it all together, not because my faith has been perfect or my patience has been without complaint or my journey has been without the moments where I almost let go entirely. I come to you because you invited me. Because the word that went out today found me exactly where I was hiding and spoke over me, something I did not have the courage to speak over myself. You called me chosen before I felt chosen. You called me mighty before I felt mighty. You called me yours before I fully understood what belonging to you meant. And today, in this moment, I receive it, all of it. The identity and the calling and the appointed Monday and the breakthrough that has been in preparation through every season I thought was only suffering. I receive it with open hands and a spirit that is finally still enough to hold it without dropping it. I do not know exactly what Monday looks like on the other side of this prayer, but I know who holds it, and I know that you have never once prepared a table and then forgotten to invite the one it was prepared for. You set the table, you sent the word, and I am here, I am yours, and I am ready. Amen. That prayer does not return void. It does not dissolve into the atmosphere unheard or unanswered or filed away in some distant divine inbox for later consideration. It goes directly into the hands of a Father who was waiting for it, who has been leaning toward you through every section of this message, who heard the agreement in your spirit before the words formed on your lips, and who is already moving in response to the posture of a chosen one who finally came truth of who they are. And as you carry this forward, as you step out of this moment and back into the life that Monday is about to rewrite, there are people who need to walk this same road. People who are in their winepress right now and do not know that a word exists that can speak mighty warrior over the hiding place they have been living in. People who are carrying the loneliness of the anointing without a community of chosen ones to remind them that the loneliness is not the final word. People whose Monday is also written in the eternal calendar and who simply need someone to share the word that will help them believe it. You know who those people are. Their faces have surfaced throughout this message, and they are surfacing again now because heaven is not finished using you as the means by which a word finds the person who needs it most. Share this, not as a transaction or an obligation, but as the overflow of a vessel that has been filled today and cannot help but pour out, like this message if the word met you somewhere real. Subscribe if you want to remain in the room where this word continues to go out, because this is not a single message. It is a continuous word for a generation of chosen ones who are being called out of their wine presses and into the fullness of what God always intended for their lives. And if something in you wants to be part of sustaining this work, if you feel the prompting to support what makes it possible for this word to keep reaching the hidden places where chosen ones are waiting to be found, the link is in the description and in the pinned comment below. Every contribution, whatever its size, is a seed planted in ground that is already producing a harvest of transformed lives. This is not the end of your story. This is not even the beginning of the end. This is the end of the beginning. The long, difficult, refining, preparing, equipping beginning that was necessary to produce the version of you that is capable of holding everything Monday is bringing. And what Monday is bringing is not just a moment. It is a momentum, a divine momentum that, once released into a life that is aligned with its calling, does not easily stop. It builds, it compounds, it carries a chosen one from one level of favor to the next, from one open door to the room behind it, from the testimony of what God did on one Monday to the greater testimony of what He continued to do in every Monday that followed. You are not walking into Monday alone. You are walking in with every word that was spoken over you today. You are walking in with the God who called Gideon mighty warrior in a winepress, and who has been calling your name in every season that tried to make you forget it. You are walking in with a community of chosen ones who received this word alongside you, whose "I believe" comments are rising into the same atmosphere as yours, whose prayers are joining with yours in a sound that heaven does not ignore. You are walking in with the interior room renovated and the frequency activated, and the clay jar ready to break open and let the light blaze out into every dark corner of a world that has been waiting for you to stop hiding. Go in the strength you have, because the strength was never really yours to begin with. It was always His, living inside a vessel that finally said yes. And that yes, your yes, the yes you have been building toward through every section of this message, is the sound that breaks the silence, opens the door, shatters the jar, and sends the light blazing across the field of everything that was promised to you before the world began. Monday is not coming to a version of you that is still in the winepress. Monday is coming to a chosen one who stood up, stepped out, received the word, and said, "I believe." Monday is coming to you, and you are ready. This is your moment. This is your season. This is your Monday, and it has already begun. Chosen one, as this message settles in you, let it breathe. You do not need to rush back into the noise. Sit for just a moment longer in what was spoken here today. Let the truth that you are chosen, that you are seen, that your Monday was written before you were born, let it move from your mind into the marrow of who you are. You came here carrying something heavy. You do not have to carry it the same way anymore. The word has shifted something. The prayer has sealed something. And the God who brought you to this message is the same God who will walk with you out of it and into everything that is waiting on the other side of your belief. If these words found you in a real place today, leave a comment, share with someone who needs it, and stay connected, because the word is not finished with you yet. You are loved, you are chosen, and Monday is already yours.